Oh.
It's a great day to be a Wildcat.
You guys have to be on cocaine to be on this podcast? Cocaine. Cocaine, really? Cocaine. Cocaine, really?
What is up, everybody? You are listening to yet another edition of Cocaine Willie, the official K-State representative on the College Huddle. I am your commissioner, Bob Trollsby, and as always, I'm joined by my co-hosts, the good chef, Andre Napier, and Fireball Matt Marchesini. But before we dive into the episode, we first want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Annie Mae's Parlor. And this, again, it's a Topo Chico crack, is brought to you by Annie Mae's Parlor, located at 616 North 12th Street in the heart of Aggieville in Manhattan, Kansas. Annie Mae's has been in business for 50 plus years, and is an absolute must-visit destination in Aggieville on game days and school nights alike. And guys, they're riding with us. They're riding with us for the long haul. We've got them locked in through 2025. So as long as you're listening to Cocaine Willie, you're going to be hearing Auntie Mae's Parlor ad reads. But they feature a wide variety of craft cocktails, draft beers, and everything in between, along with events like comedy, live music, and all sorts of other stuff. Let me take a peek here at the events page. We got KC Royals opening day, March 27th at 3 p.m. in the Parlor. You're going to get a free hot dog with your purchase of $4 Modelo pints. And our blue maize shirts will be on sale for $15.
Free glizzy, let's go.
Free glizzy, let's go. And that, I believe, is from the Wiener Hole. And that's what they call the hot dog stand there, the Wiener Hole, which is amazing. And guys, just check it out. Go to KC Royals opening day, Thursday. I will be watching somewhere else because I don't live there, but if I could be there, I would be there in a heartbeat.
I figured you're a Rockies fan now. You know, you've converted everything. Broncos.
No, definitely not the Broncos. I absolutely refuse to cheer for the Broncos, and I am still a Royals fan. For those who may not be aware of that, that's a signed portrait of George Brett to my top left. There, will always be a Royals fan. So never changing that. Contrary to what Matt Marchesini might be trying to tell other people, but go to Annie Mae's, go visit, watch the Royals opening day, 616 North 12th Street in the heart of Aggieville, and be sure to tell them Cocaine Willie sent you. Fun fact, I guess when Will Dubois went there a couple of weeks back, he said that Cocaine Willie sent them, and the bartender looked very confused. So we need more people telling Auntie Mae's bartenders that Cocaine Willie sent them.
Well, I've been twice, and the first time my dad was very amped to tell the bartender at Annie Mae's that they were sponsoring Cocaine Willie, but she did not know at the time. But the second time when I went, she knew. She knew who my dad was. So thanks to Frank.
Shout to Frank, man. Let's go, Frank.
Boys, it's been a couple weeks. How are we doing?
Doing good. On vacation, cruising through it, baby. Hoping time slows down for me. I don't want to go back to work ever, but it's been good. It's been good.
How's the college football dynasty looking? If you're on vacation,
good. It's slowed down to a halt for family reasons, not on my end, but other people's personal lives. But I will say K-State's got a natty. So
K-State, yeah, prepping for 2025, right?
And it was Avery, right? Avery led the team
of course,
to victory.
Of course.
Under your tutelage.
I can't do it without Avery. Dude was a dog in college football 25. They just need to get him hair.
How many rushing yards? Okay. Question: how many rushing yards did Avery have? How many rushing yards did Dylan Edwards have in the game?
Oh,
in the national championship.
Chef's playing on high school, so Avery ran for 3,000 yards.
We were on All-American. He probably had like 1,300 yards rushing, 2,600 yards passing.
Okay.
So
less
like 30 rushing 30 rushing touchdowns, so he was on Colin Klein pace.
Wow.
And Dylan, I got DJ to return for a senior season, so that didn't happen in real life, but he was the bell cow. Workhorse in that game is OP, so yeah. Shout out to
it's only
the college football dynasty.
Semi-realistic then. Only semi-realistic. But you know what? This is all fantasy land anyway. But you know what isn't fantasy land is the K-State women's basketball team is feeling sweet. We're feeling sweet here, going to the Sweet 16. First time since 2002, only the second time in any of our lifetimes here on the pod. And the road to get there was, the first game was pretty classic, vintage, early in the season K-State women's basketball. You dominate an inferior opponent by damn near 44 points. So damn near 50 points. Serena Sundell with 18, 2, and 9, shot 80% from the field. You got Yoki with a double-double, 17 and 10, shooting 70% from the field. And then Terrence Sides was 14 and 4 with 50% shooting from beyond the arc. And then Kentucky game against a 4-seed Kentucky, host of the first and second rounds that K-State was in. Battled to get to overtime. It was a very dicey game. I think all three of us were very anxious watching that, but secured the win 80-79. Was very nervous. It was a horribly officiated game. There were a lot of calls that just did not make sense and calls that went one way that didn't go the other in K-State's favor for whatever reason. But good teams, as I always say, good teams overcome bad officiating. It doesn't matter if the game is being officiated poorly or not. Good teams will overcome that in one way or another. There are obviously outlier situations where that's not the case, right? But good teams can overcome more often than not bad officiating. Tamira Poindexter, 24 and 6, 8 for 15 from beyond the arc in that matchup. Serena Sundell with a double-double of her own, 19 points and 14 assists. And then Yoki, 16 and 9, nearly a double-double for two different players there. And then Jalen Glenn was 30% from three, but came in clutch when the team needed her the most to come through. The team overall was 40% from three. So really that outside shooting did a lot to carry the team through and secure that victory. But through those first two games coming up, we haven't talked since conference tournament season. So what were your thoughts on those first two matchups? How do you think the team fared? And as we look ahead here, we'll get to that in a moment, but how do you feel like the Cats are set up for the next couple of games here?
Yeah, I can start. Obviously the Kentucky game was just a wild game. You look at I just how equal the teams were. You then see the position where, you had the different lead changes and, an overtime period that was just back and forth. It was an exciting game. I don't know. I won't talk much about the Fairfield game. I mean, they kicked ass in that game, but Tamira Poindexter was just absolutely lights out. I mean, as you said, incredible. Starting off 0 for 5 in that game. I really felt that we were going to have to shoot the ball really well to beat Kentucky in this game. And when you start 0 for 5, that's not obviously great, but she figured it out and was absolutely huge, of course, in this game. It was great to see Ayoka Lee for the number of touches that she had. Kentucky, I felt, had a decent game plan, with the double teams, but she still overpowered, for a decent number of those shots that she made. And then Serena Sundell was huge. I mean, those three players, really lifted this team when you didn't necessarily see a lot of shots going down for Jalen Glenn. Terrence Sides was not great offensively in this game. And so you had really 6 players that, played the majority of this game that got him the win. So I'm really proud of this team. I'm proud of Jeff Mittie too. I mean, you think of the last couple weeks and getting taken out in the conference tournament, the way that they did, I think there were higher expectations in that tournament. And then with the rumors of him potentially going to Missouri, I think the expectation of this fan base was he needed to get this team to the Sweet 16. and he did that, which is awesome. Now maybe the expectations are a little bit higher with what happened to USC last night. They're still an extremely tough team, but maybe there's a little bit more of a glimmer of hope that this team can go ahead and make some noise in Spokane on Saturday night. I was excited to see this team play Juju Watkins because she's a phenomenal player. And I really wanted to see the game plan, against her and what that was going to look like. And for a lot of people who may not watch women's basketball, Juju Watkins is a very young talent who just absolutely is wildly good. She's very different compared to Caitlin Clark, but she's just wildly good, and it would have been very fun to see. But that being said, I am super excited for this team on Saturday. I think there's a sense of momentum, and there's a sense that we saw on Saturday a team that was very much a team that went 18-1 with the Oakley all season. This was a team that really looked together. They had to battle to the final seconds, and I think they're going to grow from this with an expectation that they can go up there and make it to the Elite Eight.
Yeah, those are all good points. I don't want to get too far into USC right now. We got time to break those down, but I want to go back to that Fairfield game because I want to look at Poindexter's box score when the vast difference between those games. And that's what college basketball tournaments are really all about, is the swings and the different players that step up in tournament play can make or break a team. Really, you're going to get consistent play from Sundell. You're going to get consistent play from Ioka Lee when she's healthy and she's playing minutes and not restricted by fouls or whatever, because I think even in that first game where she only played 15 versus Fairfield, we all saw that it was a different level than how she went out versus, I think it was KU, where she just played a couple minutes and it was just like, we just saw it wasn't there. But this was different. And it wasn't even a conditioning thing. It was literally the score that kept her off of the court when she's only played 15 minutes. So when Poindexter goes into that Fairfield game and she's 3 for 11, you don't know what you're going to get from her. But she has that wide variety where she can, that variance where she'll drop a 24 piece on you with 8 threes. That's just something that happens in NCAA tournament games where you don't know who's going to be that person to step up. And next game versus USC, you don't know. Maybe it is a Terrence Sides where she can light it up from deep, and you can change a game totally different from the outcome if they weren't to step up like that. But that Kentucky game, absolute thriller. The reffing, I think they kept the fouls to a minimum. It was just when they called them. It was a little, ticky-tack here, let them beat the hell out of each other another time. So it was, I didn't appreciate that, but, Ioka Lee, dominant on the inside when she gets her moments. So can we expect that versus USC and going down the road? I think we can, because USC, they are highly athletic, but I don't think we're going to see a much bigger team than what we saw with Kentucky. They had multiple 6'5" gals out there at a time.
Yeah. I like your point that you bring up about there's always going to be someone that comes in and has the spotlight kind of shown on them for NCAA tournament games. And if that's Poindexter in this game, maybe it's Taryn Sides in the next game. It was kind of Taryn Sides in that first game against Fairfield.
Yeah.
She had a really great stat line there, but you think back to on the men's side, Mike McGurl against Creighton, you think about some of the clutch moments where Ish Masood came in during that NCAA tournament run for the Elite Eight for the men's side a couple years back. It's going to be fun to see who else might come out of the woodwork here, who else might have the spotlight shown on them in these next couple of games. If there are a couple of games, but looking at the road ahead. So Matt, you mentioned Juju Watkins. She is out for the season. I believe it was an ACL injury that was incurred last night in their matchup. Who was Mississippi State that they played last night?
Yep.
So as we're recording this Tuesday, March 25th. So that game was last night, Monday, March 24th. USC, has constantly this whole season has been a top 5 team. They are definitely one of those when you think about like a giant that needs to be slain. When you think about K-State being giant slayers the last couple of years with an Iowa and some of the wins that they had against Caitlin Clark, very similar comparison. The difference this time though is Juju's going to be out. She's not going to be playing in this matchup. And realistically, you look at the stat sheet, and admittedly, I have not watched a ton of USC women's basketball this year, but they're a team that statistically looks fairly top heavy in that it's Juju, Kiki Iriafen, and then Rhea Marshall is kind of the next woman up, so to speak. Kiki's averaging 18.6 points per game, 8.5 rebounds per game. She's a 6'3" senior forward. And then Rhea Marshall, she's more that post presence. So she's going to be going more toe to toe with Yoki, fighting for rebounds, fighting for position down below the basket. So she's a 6'4" senior or a 6'4" senior center, but isn't really lighting it up. She's not, feed Yoki type of points as far as her points in and out. And a lot of that market share goes to Juju and Kiki as far as that's concerned. But again, USC's, I'm not going to say they're a blue blood, but that's a program with a lot of money to throw around and a lot of good recruiting chops, regardless of the sport. So they're going to be able to get good talent up and down that roster, regardless of who your star player is. But they're 30-3 on the season. And that doesn't happen just because of one good player. We had Michael Beasley, who was arguably one of the best freshmen of all time on the men's side. That team didn't go 30-3. That's because you've got a lot of good role players around Juju, around Kiki that are helping carry that team as well.
Yeah, but the Juju was an instrumental part of this team. And she is literally the best basketball player in college basketball right now. In my opinion, I think she was so dynamic for a taller guard of her size that can move and score with ease and facilitate and crash the boards. And she's a great defender, which was shocking because how much effort she puts on the offensive end. But without her in there, I don't know what to expect. I don't know what players step up. Obviously, Kiki is a huge part of their team, and was a bona fide number 2. But in the losses that they've had, I think their real rival is UCLA, and UCLA is also probably one of the best teams in college basketball with a dominant center. So it makes me think of how we can attack them. And I think Ayoka Lee is absolutely the main cog that's going to have to get this going. I think a lot of our players are going to be spent on defense, trying to limit the scoring. We want to keep this score low, in my opinion. USC opens at 1.5 point favorite. So Vegas thinks it's going to be tight. In Spokane, neutral. I don't know what kind of crowd we're expecting in Spokane, but if we can keep this to a minimum, like the score real low, and have Yoki out on the floor, just without foul troubles, because I think her lack of playing basketball the last couple months really has limited her on like basketball IQ. I think she's like kind of like not very court aware sometimes with the fouls that she picks up, but I'm pumped because I think the center position where she dominates is something that USC has struggled with, even with Juju on the floor. So I gotta see Yoki put up maybe a 30 biscuit. I could see it.
A couple, I would say, key things to look out for in this game. USC is an extremely well-run defensive team. They get you to turn the ball over. And admittingly, I would say that is one of K-State's limiting factors, especially kind of towards the end of the season. Turning the ball over has been a key issue for this team, especially in some of the losses that they've had. So with USC being a strong defensive team, it means that, you're probably going to be in maybe a low scoring game. You can anticipate a low scoring game. So you're going to really have to take advantage of the opportunities on the offensive end. We saw against Kentucky with Yoki, passing the ball on the inside. She was not necessarily super fluid with a good portion of the shots that she had. She definitely had some better opportunities that she missed in that game on Sunday that you historically have seen her take advantage of. And so I'm hoping that the Kentucky game gave her the game experience coming back that, put her in a good position to be able to be successful in this game on Saturday. I would say the other really key portion of this game, despite, USC being a strong defensive team, K-State, goes on runs. We see this team go on runs in the wins that they have. And it has to be, you have to be shooting the ball at a good clip in this game. Have to be making shots early. I know in the second quarter of the Kentucky game, Kentucky went on a little run there in the second quarter. We missed some shots. We turned the ball over. And in the stretch of losses that we had, we would not take advantage of the opportunities, to try and come back in those games. We didn't, kill those runs as effectively. And Kentucky game, we were able to do that. So it's going to be key to shoot the ball well and provide good opportunities. And what I expect are going to be a limited number of offensive possessions in this game. If they're able to take advantage of those, they're going to be into this game right to the end, which it would be huge. I mean, I think we saw a game on Sunday that builds confidence and, it really shows, hey, we can be in this with anybody, no matter if we're on the road, if we're on a neutral site, etc. And really, Ayoka Lee being back, I mean, this team is 20-1 with Ayoka Lee in the lineup. You cannot say like how important that is, how important she is on the defensive end. But if you're able to get her in a one-on-one situation in the paint, if she makes those shots at a better clip, this team will win on Sunday or Saturday. So I'm excited. I'm going to say one last thing. I am super proud of this team. I'm super proud of this coaching staff. Despite this run or, we had this stretch where you weren't winning games. Yes, it shows how important Ayoka Lee is on the court and trying to game plan your team, to have such a strong player at the 5. I think it also shows how important she is in that run. It may not necessarily be Jeff Mittie getting this team, wasn't getting this team prepared. It's you have talents that these opponents are game planning for, and they can't game plan for Ayoka Lee when she's not in the lineup. I thought this was such a strong game that he really showed out there, one of his best coached games. And I really hope that the fan base embraces that fact with the understanding, this team is in the Sweet 16 for the first time since 2002, but the future of this team is also very bright with a recruiting class that is going to come in here. And I think going to surprise a lot of people, some of, what we're going to see from some of these freshmen. So I'm just excited for this team. I'm excited for them, coaching staff, everybody. And I hope they get it done on Saturday night.
Yeah, you very well may have that next good core group of players to build off of coming into this 2025 class with it being a top 10 class nationally. And I think when we're thinking keys to the game against USC, when you look at their 3 losses, they came against Notre Dame, who we know lost to Utah. So we've got a mutual opponent with Notre Dame. I don't know how that factors in with the game plan at all, but what Notre Dame was able to do in that matchup was they were able to hold USC to below 36% from the field. Same thing goes for Iowa, it was an unranked Iowa team when they played them in Big Ten conference play, which still feels weird to think about. And then you've got a loss to UCLA in the Pac-12, the Big Ten conference tournament. Again, very weird to say, but all 3 of those games, their opponents that beat them held them to 36% from the field or below. So if K-State defensively can show up and show out and limit the amount of scoring that USC is able to do without Juju on the court, which I think is entirely possible. This team is completely capable of being able to do that. They've done it in other games this year. If you can continue to build on that 3-point shooting that you had in the matchup against Kentucky, but pair that with the higher field goal percentage that you have in non 3-point shots that you had against Fairfield and in some of those matchups where you would just boat race teams early in the season. You can go on those runs. You can pair that with the good defense that this team's identity is built off of, and I think you can take the win.
Yeah, my thing is, to that point, I think to get the win, I think it's necessary that we get inside because this team is very guard heavy.
Yeah.
And to dominate in the paint and to dominate the glass is really where we're going to have to get it done because they're exceptional from their guard play. Their guards are, I mean, they're a variant of size. Like they range in terms of height. So, and their backup center outside of Marshall is a freshman who's 6'3", who plays nine minutes a game. So losing Juju was so big for them because she could play inside and outside and help with the switching of what they do on defense. It's gonna be a lot of Ioka Lee. I am just so dead set on just even when Kennedy's in, we have to attack. We have to attack inside and crash the glass and dominate and maybe get them into some foul trouble because that's really with these women's games. If you can take some key players out in terms of fouls, it's tough because the benches are not as deep when the tournament comes around. So putting players that are not ready for prime time in the game, that's huge. So I think a lot of Ioka Lee on the inside, a lot of Kennedy, and we're going to get to the glass. That's what I think.
Big Yoki game. It's going to be a big Yoki game. If K-State's going to get the dub,
30-piece.
Yoki's going to eat, man. She's going to eat.
I got a 30-piece, 11 rebounds, and Sundell has 12 assists, 14 points.
Feed Yoki. Feed Yoki. I just kept saying that to myself during the Kentucky game. I'm like, feed Yoki, feed Yoki, feed Yoki. Looking ahead, so if K-State does pull off the victory, if they are able to get the win against USC, it becomes a pretty interesting picture here. So on this side of the bracket, you've got Oklahoma or UConn, who are also facing off in the Sweet 16 in this region of the bracket. And OU's a team and a coach that you're familiar with. It's a program that you've gone toe to toe with. For Serena and Yoki, they've played Oklahoma 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times now. So they know what they're going up against with Oklahoma. They know that coaching staff. They get it. What? You're shaking your head.
We don't have to worry about Oklahoma, brother.
They're losing by 25 points. They're losing by 25 points.
And then on the other side, you've got UConn and Paige Beckers. so
yeah, UConn is a monster in and of
I'm
itself.
hoping for Oklahoma is what I'm getting at here.
Yeah, I can see that.
Boomer Stoomer all day at the end of on whatever day they're playing.
If it's Oklahoma, we can have real big dreams. I don't know where's Final Four.
Putting up 60 plus points again.
Houston.
I don't know.
I don't know where the Final Four is at this year, but
Tampa.
Tampa. Oh, okay. But I think it's UConn. I mean, we still got to worry about USC, but UConn is on a tear right now, and it's scary. It's like old UConn stuff where they're smacking people around bad. So yeah, when we get to that point, if we beat USC, we're gonna live in that moment. But UConn or on the horizon would be, and that's what we've always talked about. Like just like who would want like scheduling and stuff like that. I want to play UConn. Why not? I mean, when's the last we played them not too long ago? I feel like that was like we were in school. I don't know.
Yeah. I was in school at least.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah, UConn hasn't lost since February 6th, and that was against Tennessee, who is the only. Well, they're one of 3 5 seeds left, and they're on the other side of the bracket. And I believe Tennessee's playing Texas, which is bound to be a really good matchup as well.
It would be really, really fun to play UConn. I don't know what Matt's thoughts on that. I mean, we're both eye to eye that it's going to be UConn over there, but
they have 3 players that are that would be a star for any team. And they're all on the same team, you know. Obviously Paige, awesome player, great player. Azzy Fudd, great player. Sarah Strong, great player. I mean, UConn is like really good. I mean, they're really good.
One of the most well-coached teams in women's basketball, because Gino's been a mainstay for 30 plus years now.
You know, the positives out of it are, you know, UConn has 48 hours to prepare, you know, for their opponent. If K-State makes it there, they have 48 hours to prepare for us. I don't know. I mean, personally, I think UConn is going to the national championship game. I mean, I do. I think they're that good. USC was really unfortunate to get paired with UConn in this kind of side, you know, when the bracket came out. So I don't know.
They opened 14.5 point favorites, by the way.
I think the biggest thing with Oklahoma is, I think from what I saw, they're like the number one team in the country in pace, in offensive pace. They're a very quick team. And I think to beat UConn, you're going to have to overwhelm them offensively and make it a shootout. I think that's your big thing. And that may not even get you what you need. So I don't know. I want to obviously win Saturday before thinking about UConn. And then, yeah, I think playing UConn in the Elite Eight is a great national stage game for K-State. You know, everybody's going to be watching UConn, and, you know, I think a lot of people will be learning what K-State is, you know, as a team. So I don't know. I don't want to, it'll be a nerve-wracking game. We'll see.
I think it's cool that we're even in this conversation at the Sweet 16. Like Bob said earlier, Ole Miss, I think, is the only other. No, I guess Tennessee is like the one of the lower seeds, because it's been chalk.
Ole Miss is another one too. Yeah,
Ole Miss and Tennessee are both like, we're like the only non-chalk teams. So it's cool to see that we've made it this far. I think if we get this dub, and it'll be very similar to like what was the Barry Brown year, where, you know, we got like all the breaks where we're playing like a 16 seed in the second round and all this stuff, and you get far, but not to take anything away from the team, but you're catching some breaks. Kind of catching some breaks, if you're asking me.
Yeah. But I mean, it's not going to get any easier. It's not, because you've got UConn, and then the other side of that bracket, even you've got Kim Mulkey, LSU, UCLA, NC State.
I think UCLA is the team. I think Matt has UConn. I've got UCLA going all the way. UCLA.
Yeah,
Betts is a monster.
Yeah, I mean, the women's basketball, like, is definitely, there were basically 5 teams that you could say are like the best team in the country in the grand scheme of things. You know, it brings a lot into perspective of, you know, both the men's and the women's NCAA tournaments this year, and like the lack of upsets, and like, you know, the biggest difference between men's and women's basketball is, women's basketball is still kind of coming out of the shell of having 3 or 4 elite teams that are probably going to win the national championship, versus in on the men's side now this year, you could probably say there's probably 4 or 5 teams that are in the running to win a national championship. But I think it's fun to be along for the ride, while also we shouldn't be downplaying the fact that we are here. I think we look at, you know, we probably were on a show in October and in November, and we thought this team was going to, you know, do things in the NCAA tournament. So I don't care who we play.
Nope.
We are in a position where we're playing against really big, you know, big name women's basketball programs.
Yeah.
And that's the important thing. And it's only going to help us moving forward, you know, with the class that we have coming in, with who we're recruiting in the future. And, you know, Jeff Mitty's going to be on looking for transfers to come in here too, to replace Poindexter and replace. And so now we may have this expectation, of this team, this program being consistently at the top of the Big 12, especially with how poor the Big 12 did in the NCAA tournament, other than TCU. So,
but that's another thing. You can kind of see the tide turning where why not K-State be the class of the Big 12 in women's college basketball? Why not? Because TCU made this historic. This historic rise to where they're at. They were a decent program, but they weren't where they're at now out of nowhere. And if you could keep that brand going, where you're a consistent program, this is where the brand like USC, the brand like UConn, we probably never get to that level, but just be recognizable as a women college basketball power, especially in the Midwest, and dominate that region.
Yeah. Yeah, I am very anxious for the game. I think it's going to be a fun one. It's going to be super competitive, and we'll see what happens. We'll see what the road ahead looks like after this matchup against USC, which will be on Saturday, if I'm not mistaken.
We got the smallest line, so it's going to be that
Saturday.
Vegas is saying it's going to be the tightest one.
Saturday at 7 Central, I believe.
7 Central.
Yep. So we'll keep our eyes peeled for that. Maybe emergency pod Saturday. I don't know. It's just a quick hit potentially. We'll see. Moving on. So to the other side of the hoops world at K-State, feeling the heat. We've got Coach Tang. They're entering the offseason. There's no postseason happening. No Vegas tournament. They were in Wichita. They were watching Bennett Sturts, who he's going to Iowa. So what was the point of going to Wichita? I don't know. Talk to some big money donors, see if you can get some more NIL. Who knows what's going on? But apparently they were in Wichita this past weekend for the first and second rounds. We don't have, and I put this outline together 4 hours ago. So as of 4 hours ago, we don't have any official entries into the transfer portal as of yet. But there are two probable entries that everybody's already pretty much talked about. I think the three of us have already talked about it a number of times of Buddy Rich. I think the writing's been on the wall for months now that he's not going to be on this team come this offseason. And Ugo's another one of those guys. It's just kind of what are we doing here? So those are two guys that I would expect to enter. The portal's only been open for, 28 hours at this point, something like that, 48 hours. So who else are you speculating on who might leave? Who would you like to see leave? And are there any early entries elsewhere that you would like to see come home to Manhattan, Kansas?
I don't know if it's like public knowledge, but I think the word on the street as Brennan Haas into Iowa is like imminent. Like that's like kind of a thing that's happening behind the scenes. So that would suck, but yeah. I don't know if that's like public, like that's like well known, but that's what message board chatter is all about. So that would not be great. But in reality, not to downplay Brendan Haas, because he was a very important piece, and you kind of want that sharpshooter on the squad. We got to find some dogs out there. We got to find some dogs, and he's definitely not the dog. He's not an alpha dog on this squad. So I don't know where we're going to find those people, because it's going to be a slow trickle into the portal. I don't know. I think we need to find. I think Doug has to stay. Doug staying is going to be huge with a year of development. I don't know where what pieces are going to be out there. That's really the thing. It's the portal's open, but is it really open yet? Is it really the big dogs, the big fish out there yet? I don't know.
I'll go on a expert prediction that in June we will still be unhappy with whoever we bring in, no matter what. I think we have the expectations, which is fine. I think the biggest thing out of the past 24 hours or whatnot since the portal's open is, how many players, 700 players in one day entered the portal? Insane. I don't know how this is going to be sustainable moving forward. I just don't. As a college basketball fan, I would say. I think players deserve to get their due. They deserve to get paid. But I think the asking price for a lot of players is going to go up this year, and it's going to go up next year, and it's going to get to an unsustainable model. It really is. So,
well, I think that court settlement once they start, once we start paying the players through the school, and that $20 million basically from every program to go to the players, I think that's going to limit the amount of this asking price. But I think, like you said, the asking prices now are going to be really, really high because they know into the future that the numbers that they're going to be asking for are just not going to happen.
And I believe there's going to be more scrutiny as well around the NIL being actual name, image, and likeness use in advertising or endorsements or whatever.
It has to be. It's not
instead of this whole like, hey, we're going to put together an NIL package, and that could mean whatever you want it to mean, Coleman Hawkins or whoever. So, because I frankly haven't seen a ton of advertising with Coleman Hawkins in it since he's been at K-State.
But I think overall, I mean, the expectation of what we're hearing is Buddy Rich, Ugo going to be leaving. Brendan Hawson's an interesting one. As you said, there have been some rumblings with that. In reality, when we got Brendan Hawson last year, my expectation was that he was going to come off the bench and be a 3-point shooter for us.
Yeah.
Not starting games. That was what I thought he was going to be brought here to do. He showed he was obviously from an offensive perspective, he had those stretches where he was making a lot of shots. I thought during Big 12 play, during the run, he got better on the defensive end, but that kind of, I think that trend ended as we got towards the end of the year. He's one that I think should be coming off the bench, and that if you're going to be trying to recruit a guard, a shooting guard to come in, he's not going to be happy coming off the bench. And so maybe him moving to another opportunity might be best to try and, recruit over that. CJ Jones is an interesting kind of decision for me, because would it be good to have him in the system for another year? Maybe.
Yeah.
I also felt he didn't necessarily show the flashes that I expected from him, when we picked him up.
I feel like he's also kind of a package deal with Buddy, though, right? Because wasn't Buddy the one that recruited him anyway?
I don't know.
The St. Louis connection.
But this is the thing about like a player like CJ Jones. If Tang has gone on this, this journey that we've gone on with Jerome Tang about his recruiting style. I mean, when he first got here, it was, I'm going to hit the high school market hard. I'm going to bring in the best players from the high school.
And with the portal, I'm not going to bring in the first entries to the portal, because
that was the first time. Yeah, exactly. That was the first time. Then the second go around, he was like, well, we kind of have to hit the big fish in the transfer portal. That didn't necessarily work out. And now it's to the point where he's wanting the Houston model. And if you want that Houston model, you got to have people in the program in the trenches doing it up, and you need seniors. You can't be running your seniors off, and that's CJ Jones next year. He would be a senior.
I agree.
Doug would be a senior, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. And you need
Austin
time.
would be a senior.
He doesn't have the luxury of time at this point.
I think,
unfortunately, before Matt gets in here, save that point, Matt. I think he does have time. I don't think he's going anywhere, unfortunately.
Yeah. I look, he's not going anywhere for 2 years. He's not. I mean, my biggest issue with like the Houston model, or my biggest issue with trying to replicate the Houston model, is we don't have a team that plays tough enough like Houston. It's not just about seniors. It's not just about
I think we can
experience in the program.
I think we can though. I think the thing with the toughness aspect is it's easy to be tough when you're old, physical, and you're willing to play defense. Before this year, the defense that Tang had brought, we were really, really stingy on defense.
Yes.
Now, we couldn't always throw it in the ocean, but we would play tough and we would get down dirty on it. But this year was hopefully it was that, the outlier to what Tang brings. But if he wants that Houston model, we need back to that old defensive style where we're really tough, we're really physical, big centers that are because we were playing DNG at center. He was a great defensive player, but he wasn't, the most physical, tough, nasty guy in the inside.
I mean,
so if we have
Will McNair, bringing in Will McNair was a guy who was
he was tough.
He was a tough guy.
What was before him? The African, Bebe.
Tough.
Yeah. I mean, I just, with the way this team, with who's coming back, I don't think there's an element of toughness that you're going to replicate a Houston model with. That's just my opinion. A couple other players that I'm interested to see, like everybody talks about Taj Manning, like being this culture guy that you want to keep a culture guy, right? You want to keep a guy who's been in the program, but in the grand scheme of things, what was the culture this year? Like what if you're keeping a guy to maintain culture, but the culture isn't spreading to other people on the team, what's the point? Like he's not getting any playing time.
No.
He could be your 13th guy or whatever, but why aren't you trying to recruit over him? Like if you want to bring in more talented people, I think there's an opportunity there to where you don't necessarily have to keep a guy like that in the program. Go let him go play, like maybe he's fine sitting on the bench, but everybody's talking about this like culture guy. Where is that? Like, what's the point?
I could see that. The thing is, if you keep somebody, I mean, good character guys is what's going to build the culture. So if we have a guy that's 13th on the bench that's going to practice hard and is going to go get it in practice and bring the best out of somebody, this is just what I'm sugarcoating all of this because obviously we want to recruit over Taj Manning and he has to be okay with that if he wants to stay on the team. If this is me recruiting, you have to be okay with you being the literal last guy on the bench and practicing hard as hell and practice and making everybody better. But the thing is, we just obviously it just started, so we don't know necessarily. But like to your point, the culture that he's been a part of has been ass. So I don't know. But
I struggle with that.
But the same thing could be said for Moby. We didn't expect Moby to be anything, and we got a little glimpse of it. But really, what is that? What is that guy? What is he?
I think he was basically what Buddy Rich was last year.
Better defensively.
I don't know if he was better defensively, to be honest. I don't think Moby was all that good defensively. I think he was an excellent jump ball defensive rebounder, but he wasn't necessarily. He was getting cooked a lot.
I think Moby and Buddy Rich are the same like type of player you want on a team. So Buddy leaving,
they're 6'3", 6'4" power forwards. I mean, but that's not what you build your team around. Like you were saying with Taj Manning, you could say the same thing about Moby. You could say the same thing about Buddy. The only thing about Buddy is he's shown glimpses of offense. But his head is literally facing that way because it's not on straight. So we got to get guys that are tough. If this is the Houston model, you don't think Houston's brought in some guys that are dickheads? Yeah, well, dickheads that want the ball and are a little bit rough around the edges and might be doing some shit outside of Houston and their Hellcats. I think they do, but the thing is, they have a culture that Matt was alluding to that we don't have. So we can't bring in the guys that Houston brings in. We have to mold them. But we're not doing that because the last few years have been a little. We don't. Tang isn't. I'm going on a little diatribe here, but Tang is finally admitting to what we've all been saying, that he just doesn't coach these guys right, and he finally admitted it. I mean, this year with the Kellis Robinette, Wichita Eagle kind of thing that he put out, he finally admitted that he was coaching these guys differently than he has coached anybody else before because of the money situation. Well, thanks for finally admitting that, but we all knew that. So when is he going to stick to his principles and bring in? And that's Matt, I like what you're saying, and I agree with you. The Houston model is the Houston model. Why are we doing the Houston model? We should be making the K-State model.
Correct.
What are we doing here? We're not Houston.
Correct.
Let's be K-State.
Like, I think the big thing is Houston does a great job of talent development and talent evaluation.
Hall of Fame coach.
They have a Hall of Fame coach, correct. But what they do a really good job of filling their roster year after year with impact guys from the transfer portal, as well as the development. And so this coaching staff, as much as like they have to improve on maybe a little bit more talent development across the team, because you could say like D&G's development in this program was exceptional. Cam Carter, Cam very much, I mean, he developed in this program coming from Mississippi State. Marquise Noel, I think, became a better player in the one season that he had. Like, there's the ability to develop here, but they're not spreading that development to other players to where you're seeing an impact. But then you're also seeing exceptional talent evaluation in the transfer portal. Like, Houston basically has hit on every player they bring in. LJ Cryer, hit on him. Milo Suzan, hit on him. He's become a really great player at Houston. Malik Wilson came from Texas Tech. He's shown these flashes in this program, especially when, guys are in foul trouble. He comes in, makes plays. I mean, you could also say the same for Baylor, like Scott Drew, and you would have expected that some of what Scott Drew taught Jerome Tang and how to develop the Baylor program would have come over as well. I'm saying Baylor has their own little thing, but they do a good job of talent evaluation in the portal, but they also do a good job of recruiting.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go, because I agree with you that Baylor does a little bit different than Houston. I mean, Houston, they all do it. When good programs do both of it. They do it all. Like, why are we? I mean, let's not make it too complicated. If you're a Duke, if you're a Houston, if you're a UConn, if you're a Baylor, whoever, fill in the blank with a good team. They recruit high school players that are really, really good. They let them play, but they bring them either they're one and dones or they develop into really star players for 3 or 4 years. Then with the gaps that they fill from the one and dones or whatever, they hit on the portal, like you were saying, Matt, with bona fide players. It's not necessarily that you want to flip your roster for 8 players every year and say, hey, we're recruiting a sophomore and a freshman out of the portal. Baylor's recruiting a third-year junior that has averaged 16 points and is a bona fide player at the Power 4 level. They're not getting some development piece in the portal that needs to sit on the bench. That's just not what they do. So I don't know what the Houston model is. I don't know what the Baylor model is. I don't know what the Duke model is. I know what winning basketball model is, and that's what K-State needs to do. We need to do it our way. Just recruit the best players that you can that can play, and then get bona fide players out of the portal. We did it with Coleman Hawkins, but we're piddle farting around, treating them like they're different, treating them like they're K-State basketball players. What are we doing?
And I'll add this. So I look at the opposite of this in the Iowa State model. Iowa State does a decent job from a recruiting perspective of finding local talent. I mean, Lipsy was literally in their backyard. Momchilovich is from Milwaukee. That's a big, kind of recruiting ground for Iowa State. But think of who they've gotten in the transfer portal and where these players have come from. Curtis Jones, Buffalo.
Charlotte. Oh, which ones was Charlotte? Somebody was from Charlotte.
Joshua Jefferson, St. Mary's. St. Mary's is a good team. Deshaun Jackson, UNI. No. That was Nate Heisey, UNI. Deshaun Jackson, Charlotte. Deshaun Gilbert, UNLV.
But that was that was his guy from UNLV.
Sure, but
mid majors, it's mid major talent.
So it isn't necessarily like the top. Like TJ Otzelberger and his coaching staff are doing a great job of finding guys who are down a level, and I would say putting them in a good position by developing them into the players that they are. I would have never, Keshawn Gilbert, yes, he came from UNLV, but he's grown in that role in his 2 years at Iowa State. Curtis Jones, I mean, like every program does something different and they have their own style. And the thing with K-State is they don't have a style. They haven't figured it out because year.
But we could do things we could take little pieces from other programs. I don't have an issue with that. And that's really all recruiting is. If you trust and believe that CJ Jones is going to develop into a player, you keep him around and you developed him from his junior to senior year. If he is worth his salt as a basketball player and he wants to put in the work, he could be a good player. Yeah. I don't know how good of a player, but that's where your ID is. And that's what Matt is saying, that if you're going to ID lower level guys and you want to develop into players, you've got to hit on the other guys to make sure that if he falls short, that you've got other guys that are going to do it. David Castillo, your biggest recruiting win in high school, you wanted to play him, but he's just not ready. And you spent all this time inflating him like he was going, like he's pushing all these guys. He's pushing to be the starting point guard. Where? When? Who? Not that guy. That's a lie. Don't lie. Just play your game, man. That David Castillo is going to be a role player. Develop him as a role player for this season. Stop putting him out there for 22 minutes and sitting Doug McDaniels versus Texas Tech and losing that game.
Yeah.
Why are we doing that?
Here's my other thing is we when we go out to the portal and we get these guys that maybe are coming from a lower level or maybe a bottom tier Power 5 program. So you think of like a Doug or you think of a Chore. That one really worked out. But none of these guys are averaging north of 15, 16 points per game. I think if you go after some of this mid-major talent, you need to get someone like a Bennett Sturts who's averaging 20 points a game.
But he's not going to average 20 points in the Big 12. It's just not going to happen.
You don't know that.
I mean, his usage would have to be astronomical. I mean, it's hard to average.
So you get a Chore. He's averaging 16. What's he going to average in the Big 12? 5?
We realistically probably should have thought that he averaged like 10 or 12. But he didn't have his head on straight. He saw the money and got the hell out of here.
We need to aim higher when it comes to some of the talent we're bringing in here. Because I just.
But that just depends on the style of basketball we want to play. What style of basketball does K-State play?
I don't even know.
If we want to be that rough and
style every year,
if we want to be that rough and rugged team, Houston model, where we're getting it nasty down in there and we're playing defense and we're suffocating teams. We don't need a guy to average 17 points, 18 points. We need 4 guys to average 12, and we beat the shit out of teams. That's what we need to do. That's the Houston model. I mean, it is what it is. We don't have a style. We don't have one.
I'm thinking about this kind of in like corporate America terms, right? So you had your first year in the job. You get a little bit of leeway because you're new to the position. So in my role, we would call that a ramp. Like you get to ramp up to whatever your quota would be. But you go to the Elite 8 and you over exceeded expectations by 1 million. So what happens the next year? Your quota gets increased astronomically, but you don't get that ramp. You don't get that leeway that you got when you first started that job in your first year of the role. So the second year rolls around. You underperformed expectations. You do make the postseason with the NIT, but you underperformed expectations. People kind of think, well, maybe we could repeat what we did the previous year. We rebuilt the roster. We run everybody off. We bring in a brand new roster completely. It worked last year. Why wouldn't it work this year? And we saw that it didn't necessarily work the second year. The third year rolls around. You have a couple of pieces that you could build around Taj Manning. Dude, I don't even know, but you rebuild the roster again. You go to the portal, you get a bunch of new guys again. You try to go after some big names, and you think in theory, oh, this is going to work. And you drastically underperform to the expectations. And so the fans, being the management here, or the AD being the management, you're looking at this and you're like, what the hell is this guy doing? There's no consistency here. You keep saying that you're going to do something, you never follow through on it, and the results do not add up whatsoever. So he's been on a performance improvement plan starting, probably after non-conference play this season. And he has, in my mind, I know that we're all saying he's going to be around for 2 years, but he has to prove it. He has to prove that he can do something with roster construction that makes sense and gets you to the postseason. And by postseason, I'm not saying NIT. I'm not saying Vegas tournament. You need to make the postseason. You need to make the NCAA tournament and have a competitive roster that can win night in and night out and be competitive for more than a 6-game stretch against competition where 5 of those teams are now eliminated. One of the teams we beat in that 6-game stretch is still playing. There's no consistency. It's perpetually frustrating. And if you're looking at this from a corporate lens, this guy's getting fired if he doesn't deliver this season. He gets fired halfway through the season if he doesn't deliver on the first half of the season. If I'm just thinking about it from my lens with my job.
One, we have to figure out what the schedule is going to be. So, I mean, that could be a whole nother can of worms.
That was a whole other can of worms because the schedule was too hard. And now the schedule's too easy. And then the schedule's too hard again. There's no consistency here. It's wildly frustrating from the fans' perspective. From my perspective, it's just wildly frustrating.
I'm already dead set on Tang being here for another 2 years, which is fine. I'm totally okay. I'm willing to live through that, brother. Sure. I'm willing to live through that. It's just we got to stick to one thing. Just stick to it. I don't care if he dumps the whole roster and does it again. Do it. Just stick with it and stick with it through the whole way. And don't sell me another excuse next year on what it is. Just build your roster, keep your head down, keep grinding, and say we got to trust the process. I hate that as much as anybody in the world. Trust the process, but trust it. Whatever it is, trust your gut. That's what it is. We don't know what the
process is. There's been 3 different processes, 3 different years, so that's why it makes it difficult to trust the process.
I'm all with you, brother, but we gotta stay. I think next year, one, I'm gonna be responsible as a fan. I'm not going to have expectations until at least halfway through non-con. I'm not going to have any expectations. I don't even know what I'm not going to have any 0 expectations going into non-con. So halfway through non-con, then I will evaluate the team for what they are, and I'll go from there, and I'll give my honest opinion on what it is. And if I like E, if I don't like E, I'm going to let it be known, but I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to stick with it. I'm not going to bitch. I'm not going to moan. I'm going to stick with it because I think if he sticks with something, we can get it done. I'm putting the purple glasses back on. I don't care. I'm willing to ride with this squad. I'm willing to ride with it, but it's just I'm having a hard time trusting them, but I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to. I'm a good fan.
I'm setting 0 expectations for next season and the following at this point. And I'm not going to try to talk myself into believing this team can do anything more than what they did this year. If this year's performance is the same that we get next year, I'm not going to talk myself into it. I'm not going to be trying to count wins out and see there could be a path if we do this, this, and this. It's just, you're either going to be a tournament team or you're not. And I'm not going to try to look at it any differently than that. But
so right now the roster is Doug. That's Doug. Okay. Let's, David Castillo. Let's say CJ Jones. Max Jones is not coming back. Are we all 100% on that?
I don't know. Probably.
You're not muted. Max is gone. Who else do we have? The front court is decimated. I mean, Ugo's not gone yet. So maybe Ugo can figure it out.
No.
I mean, he's a young cat.
I'm
He's
not
a young
dead
cat.
yet.
No.
I mean, I don't want him here, but
For
maybe
what
he'll
he's getting
figure it out.
paid, no.
Okay. What else? Tyreek's not coming back, right? The Memphis transfer. I mean, he's not getting a year
That's not true. Oh, but that's
because he's
never-
waiting on the Max Jones thing.
huh? Yeah, he is waiting.
So
on
I don't
Really?
expect him to be back. He was just a bench. He was just a bench warmer this year. I mean, he literally didn't play any minutes for us, obviously, and then he was waiting on the Max Jones treatment.
He was waiting on a waiver even after he transferred, right?
That's what I'm saying. So
yeah.
So he's gone. Moby,
in 4 years.
Moby, he's back. Buddy, let's say Buddy's back. I mean, I'm not confident. I mean, let's say Brennan. I mean, he's not gone yet. BH is back, so I see at most 2 starters on that. 2 starters, and everybody below on this needs to be 9 down. They need to be 9th man down. Moby does not need to see the court. Buddy does not need to see the court unless he straightens it out. Ugo probably does not need to see the court. Doug needs to be on there. David probably, if he can get his shit together, he's a 4-star for a reason. He probably needs to see the court. CJ probably should be a bench guy. And Brendan Hostin probably should be a bench guy. We got a lot of spots to fill, and we are a little squad. We are little. Especially if y'all want to get rid of Ugo. We're all under, I mean, we're under 6'4".
He's
I
not
don't
coming
even
back.
necess-
He's
I
not
don't-
coming back.
I don't even necessarily want him to leave. I just don't think he's coming back.
I don't think the only positives that I saw him on the court this year were like at some points being able to defend the rim, but like
Does good blocks.
The rebounding was atrocious. He wasn't great on the offensive end. I just I'm sorry. Like for what he's getting paid with NIL, you got to do something better than that.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, it's you asked me earlier, like, who are some portal names that I'm thinking of? I'm thinking Donovan Dent from New Mexico, but he is probably going to get every bit of $1.5 million in the portal. There's no reason. I mean, he's going to get whatever he desires. I don't even know where he's from. I know he's from New Mexico, but I don't know where he, like, hometown. Does he want to go back home? I don't know any of that stuff. But if you could get a guy like him, because he's very similar to the guy that went to Gonzaga, that we thought we had committed.
Caliph Battle.
Yeah, Caliph Battle.
Oh, seeing him on the court for Gonzaga was hilarious.
He reminds me of him and what he could do for our program. You know, a 6'2" ball handler that can score at any level.
I think he's going to be the number 1 guy in the portal. And
yeah,
there's going to be some interesting names out there. I mean, we saw some today, like Elliot Cadeau is an interesting one.
Who?
From North Carolina, the point guard from North Carolina. Apparently we're in with the Robert Morris forward who had 25 against Alabama.
He's an energy guy, just like
he is an energy guy.
Is that just a chore times 2? Like,
I don't know.
AU game last year with Samford.
You know, the Valpo guy who's the
all
K-State
right,
legacy,
baby.
That will be interesting. I mean, look, here's what I'm prepared for. I'm prepared that we're going to hear Kansas State is going to be in with some of the top people. Like,
of course. And
we're going to hear it early on, and it's going to be about closing the deal. But the thing is, a lot of schools are going to be more competitive in it now with the revenue sharing too. Like, there's going to be a lot of schools that are now going to be competitive, just like us, and we get the revenue sharing too with, everybody who's
But
donating.
when does that come into effect? I think that's like 2 years from now, right? Or that next year?
No, this is
This
upcoming.
season.
Right now?
Yeah,
season,
with football, we have to get down to 105 players on the roster. All scholarship players.
So we have more money available to us, to be able to work with, but so do a lot of other schools. And, there are going to be some schools who maybe aren't super competitive with NIL, but are going to take their revenue sharing and maybe go for one guy. They're going to give everything to try and get this one guy. And so that's, the next couple months are going to be interesting with this whole thing. I mean, I think we all know that the program needs upgrades and at key positions. And it's going to be very interesting to see who leaves. Is there a surprise? Is Doug McDaniel a guy who maybe he's like, F this, I'm going to be out? You just never know.
If we have nothing to sell them, I mean, I don't know. I was thinking that same thing.
That was Day last year. Day was a guy that we all, after 2 or 3 weeks,
he's back in the portal.
Stick around.
Bring Day back.
He's back in the portal. Nigel Pack apparently might, he's
how does he have another year?
He's applying for a medical red shirt for another year. Like, you never know. You just
bring him back.
There's these guys, that are going to kind of come out of the woodwork that you don't expect. And so, we just have to be competitive. But
does Cam Carter have another year of eligibility we don't know about? Bring him back.
Yeah, bring him back. I'm good, actually. This team, amazingly enough, I think this team would have been a lot better with Cam Carter, instead of starting Brendan Housen all year. I mean,
I think that bridge has been burned after that game in Manhattan, but oh man. Well, I don't have anything else. I did have some stuff on the agenda for football, but realistically, all we have to talk about is K-State's the betting favorite currently to win the Big 12. We got a lot of things to look forward to with spring practice. We'll probably have, an episode at some point, depending on how this women's next game
next week
or multiple games or whatever goes. So we will at least have next week. We'll see what happens from there before we, go on our annual hiatus. But that's going to do it for us tonight. Once again, shout out to Annie Mae's Parlor. It's the best bar in Aggieville. Visit them at www.antimaze.com for a full list of their upcoming events. And if you stop by, be sure to tell them Cocaine Willie sent you. Additionally, we're the K-State rep on the College Huddle, so follow them at College Huddle or go to the website thecollegehuddle.com. And last but not least, follow the show at Cocaine Willie on YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Blue Sky, or follow us individually. I'm at Bob Trollsby. Chef is at Chef Andre Napier, and Fireball Matt is at Matt Marchesini. Chef.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug, baby.
We are all coke and no joke. Wildcat Country. Let's ride. Beat USC.
Let's go.